Welcome back to Down and Dirty Modding, where we've thrown the script out the window so we can concentrate on the nuts and bolts of modding. I'm Dave, and today we're going to start a new series of videos looking at the sub $80 case market. There's a very vibrant market right now, sub $80, and when I went out looking at cases, I came across a bunch of them that I thought, man, these would be really cool cases to mod in, where we can either increase the functionality or the looks of it, and make it a really nice case and something you'd want to have on your desk. The general idea that I wanted to keep was that everything would be hardware agnostic. It didn't matter what hardware, what platform you were going to use, what graphics card, what kind of cooling, all of it would fit. You would be able to upgrade through the years so that you wouldn't be redoing your mods every time you wanted to put a new card or something else in. So that's the general idea of what we're going to be doing. We're going to work on initially 3 different cases. The first one's going to be our Meshify C here. And I'm going to take you, hopefully, through the beginning to the end of the modding process. So we'll look at putting our ideas down on a piece of paper, which is not real spectacular for me because it's chicken scratches, up through the different mods, and then putting it all together and winding up with a finished product. So let's go ahead and jump into it. The first thing I'm going to do is show off the hardware that I'm going to be using in these 3 mods. And it's going between the mods. It's going to be one of those things where I want to prove that it doesn't matter, this stuff is going to fit, and just the basic stuff is going to fit into these cases. So let's go ahead and snag a look at all this. I'm starting off with the MSI Tomahawk B350 motherboard. Basically I chose this because it's black and white, and the LEDs are white and they're not red, and everything comes out red. Oh my god. I wanted this because we don't want the hardware to stand out in this case. We want to be able to float between different styles with one motherboard. So we went with it. I've got a Ryzen 1700X processor on there. It's all going to be cooled by a Corsair H100i, just because I wanted easy cooling to work with, and these are pretty simple and pretty foolproof. Memory is HyperX Predator memory, DDR4, and I also have, you can't see it, but a HyperX Predator M.2 drive shoved in the M.2 slot. Now these, you'll notice, are blue and white because they came from a different build. And that's going to give me a chance to show you all, although I don't want to concentrate on hardware, we're going to go over a few things with hardware on this one because I have to get those back to being the right color. And also, I want to show you how to make one of these little covers for your M.2 drives to kind of snazzy them up a little bit. Even though a lot of times you don't see them underneath the graphics card, it's nice to have them look a little better. So we'll do that, and then the piece de resistance of, or whatever, I don't know, I'm probably murdering something by saying that. But the big part of this build, about what we're doing in this case, is the NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1070. I did have to kind of ask for favors to get this one, so thanks NVIDIA GeForce Garage for hooking me up with this. Very important to this build, and I didn't have one laying around. So, but that's very important for what we're doing to this Meshify C. Power-wise, I went with a SFX. I think this is a Silverstone 600 watt power supply. Now the SFX kind of makes it kind of interesting because all these cases have ATX power supply slots, so I have to use a mounting bracket to make it fit. But if you're looking at SFX power supplies, they are getting a lot better than what they used to be. It used to be only 450 watts. Now this 600 watts easily can push this system. Let's see if there's anything I missed on that. The motherboard is MATX because I think all these cases are at least MATX compatible. This one may go full size ATX, I believe, but some of the other ones don't. So I want to keep that to where I can swap it between builds. Let's see. Cables, I also went with a set of cable mod cables in black. Once again, like the motherboard, I didn't want them to stand out, so I just got straight up black so you won't see them. And they won't be, glaring out, oh my god, this color. But these builds are kind of one of those deals where you could use different colors and looks. But like I said, I just want the hardware to blend in and not even seem like it's there. So now that we know what we're sticking in the build, we can look at our Meshify C. Now when I first saw this case, I knew what I wanted to do with it. The front panel with its 3D polygons and stuff just screamed NVIDIA's tessellation right off the bat. As soon as I saw it, first picture. So I knew I was going to try to get one and do that way. So I had to kind of get it and then look at it to see what all sorts of things I was going to do. Anytime you do a mod, you want to at least draw up something. You want some sort of a roadmap. It doesn't have to be a CAD drawing of everything that you're going to do, but you want to at least write down the ideas you have so that if you get sidetracked and want to decide to do something else, you want to be able to look at your original map and say, that's going to mess with this, so how are we going to work those together, or am I going to have to pick one or the other? So these are my just chicken scratches of what I'm planning on doing. Basically involves painting this front panel, painting the power supply shroud, and adding accents to a couple of different spots. I do believe there's going to be some logo work going on the back side. I'm not really sure if I'm going to do paint or vinyl yet. I have to decide when I get to it. But laying down a map kind of lets you go in and say, okay, this is the direction I'm going. What do we need to start on first? Otherwise, you tend to get lost and wrapped up in details that don't even involve what you're trying to do. So the first thing we're going to do is first thing we're going to do is take off that front panel and start prepping it for paint. So let me set all this stuff to the side. We'll get it taken apart. We'll start looking at how we're going to paint that front panel. And be very careful. This is the tempered glass edition, which is kind of crazy that you can get an $80 tempered glass edition. And actually, I think the in one I got is tempered glass, I believe, and then I bought a Cooler Master that was like $40 that has an acrylic side panel, which I'm not holding my breath on how nice that is, but I think it's something where we could replace it with a better piece of acrylic, depending on what they've given us, and still have a really good look to it. So. Basically, like I said, we're going to paint the shroud, paint a few details in here, not go real crazy. This has really good airflow already. It does probably need some extra fans, but you know, we're not restricted up here in the front very bad. We have decent air exhaust in the back and on the top. So functionally, it's actually a pretty nice case. I was really impressed. But we're going to take this front panel off so we can get to this mesh on our screen up here. It's basically just squeezing the tabs on the inside. I think I have to take this other side off too. Okay, so we've got that popped off. Now you'll notice that all the wiring is still going through, but I did a little bit of research on this, or basically I just took it apart all and realized that this pops out without taking the whole front panel off. So we can leave that all strung through there and wired. I don't think this is going to do any color changing. So taking it apart and pulling all those wires out really doesn't help us with anything. Also, one thing I think I forgot to put on my mod idea was a vertical GPU mount. So I probably ought to add that if I can find a pin that works. Now I've done another video about those vertical mounts, and I'll try to put something somewhere around here that shows how you can do your own, basically on the cheap with very few tools. You'll need something to cut aluminum with. You'll need a little bitty piece of aluminum, which you can pick up on Amazon pretty cheap, or actually a lot of online. I use online metals, and that, a vise and a hammer, and basically you make a drill, and you can make your own vertical GPU mount rather than going and buying somebody else's. But I will link a video to that somewhere around here. Let's get back into our panels. I'm not getting sidetracked even more. Okay, so now I haven't taken this part yet, but basically I believe that all we need to do is pull off and bend these tabs of this mesh out. We'll get a screwdriver for that, so we can poke ourselves in the finger. You want to be careful with this mesh. We want to bend it out, but we don't want to bend it and stress that metal. If you bend these things back and forth too much, they'll fatigue and they'll end up breaking off, and then we'll kind of be screwed. So just pry them up so it comes off. I almost need like elevator music while I'm doing this. Alright, so now that should pop right off. I say should. Apparently it's not going to. What's your problem? I'm going to go ahead and take the badge off the front too. I think that might be holding it. And I think we can actually probably do something with this badge as well. Maybe put a piece of vinyl over it. Custom logo or something. Yeah, we should be able to do something with that. That's just a fractal sticker, so anything will probably go right back on there. Yay! Alright, comes right apart. See? That's all we needed. So let's set the back and the mesh to the side. That. And so we've got our mesh now. Now what we're going to do is we're going to paint this. I did some research, and that's something you always want to do when you're doing a mod, is a little bit of research to even just for better ideas, to give clarity to what you're trying to think of. Now NVIDIA has done a few different variations of its tessellation pattern. The ones I found were for like booths at expos and stuff. One of them was a black, gray, and green motif, where they actually on a flat panel did the different colors, which gave it the three-dimensional tessellated look. And I was thinking originally of doing that, but really these are a little difficult to kind of mark off and delineate where the angles are. They don't. The panel just freaks with your eye when you're trying to do it. It's part of it, and sometimes they don't really have a definite angle in them that delineates different triangles. So there was another one that I saw where basically they had a shaped panel that they sprayed one color, green obviously, and let the panel itself take care of the shading with the 3D effects. So that's what we're going to try first to see if it pans out. So we're going to paint this green, and hopefully the way light hits these different angles will show up and give us our different triangles. So the first thing we need to do is get this primed up and ready to paint. So we're going to go ahead and take some scratch pads. And this is just a medium scratch pad. And what we're going to do is we're going to run this across our mesh to scratch up that surface. And that gives our paint something to grab onto. Since we can't have a chemical bond, I don't know if you watched the earlier paint video where we talked about how different kinds of paints work a little bit. Paint won't stick to old paint that's cured. So we need some sort of physical bond, and these scratches give that paint something to claw onto. So we're going to take this and just scratch up this whole surface. And be really careful not to knock the bends out of it. But we want to go through and make sure everything's got a nice roughed up surface to it. And make sure you get all the crooks and crannies and everywhere that you're going to have paint, just because you don't want to have one loose spot pop up on you and then start peeling through the rest of the paint. So Make sure you get it all scratched up. Now these, usually any hardware store or paint store will have something like this. It's pretty common. It's just a medium scratch pad. But now that we've done that, we can take some primer and clean this up a little bit. I'm going to use compressed air, but you can take like a tack rag, or even better would be to wash it off with some soapy water and let it dry, or dry it and then let it dry. But we can do that and then throw some primer on it, then we'll be ready to put our first coat of paint on it. Now I'm just going to take some standard automotive edge primer. Sorry about the acoustics in here. This is kind of my little paint room. Normally you'd do this outside. I do have a fan set up to pull extra paint out. Lets me paint in the winter. So you want to make sure that your paint's shaken up really well. Then we want to go over this with real light coats and probably go over it 2 or 3 times each side. So we'll go ahead and kick the fan on, kick some music on, and get this painted up real quick. Alright, so we've got it all primed up. You might have noticed that when I was spraying it, I sprayed it from different angles to make sure all the holes got filled from every side, and I also sprayed the back. After we did that, we let it set for an hour or so to make sure it cured out. Basically follow the instructions on the can, and then I went and took a scratch pad and just slightly went over the top of it to give a little bit of a scratch to this, to give it a bite, and also to knock down any spots that may have been, like if I'd got a little bit of dust between cleaning it up and actually spraying the paint. So just to make sure the finish is nice and smooth. So a little bit of buffing with this, and now we're ready to go with paint. Paint's kind of the interesting part on this because we are going with an NVIDIA theme, so it needs to be NVIDIA green, which you really won't find on the shelves at your local hardware store. So there are a few options to work around this. You can always take a color swatch into like a automotive paint store and possibly get them to mix up a spray can of that green, or you can do what we're going to do, and we're going to use airbrush paints because I can mix those up myself, and I've got an airbrush that allows me to spray them. So if you don't have an airbrush, it's kind of going to be a little harder to do this. I'm not really sure if there's an easy way. If you all know of a way, leave it down in the comments, but to my mind it's basically mix up model paints, mix up airbrush paints, or have somebody custom mix a can of green for you. So we're going to take green, white, and yellow. Ooh, that's a transparent yellow. I don't know if that's going to work. Let me go get a regular yellow. Much better. So we've got a green, white, and a yellow, and we're going to basically try to mix up NVIDIA green. We do need something to match it to, and that's where our NVIDIA tote bag that we got at a land comes in handy. This is NVIDIA green, so we want to match our paints up to that color. We're going to mix them in an extra little jar that you can buy at your hobby stores. And I want to mix up enough that I can spray this and also the power supply shroud and a few other pieces in here. So I'm going to mix quite a bit up. And, you know, if I've got some extra, I've got some extra. Oh yeah, that's looking good. So now we can grab our airbrush, use this paint, paint this green. We'll give it a night to dry out, and then we'll go over it with a spray on clear, probably just some regular enamel auto part Rust-Oleum clear, something to give it a little more protection, that because this goes on in really thin layers, and then we can go ahead and put that back together and we'll have the front panel done. Okay, so we've got our very rigged paint setup going on here, and we're going to airbrush this. Now, I'm not the most professional airbrusher, so a lot of what I've learned I've garnered from videos and stuff like that, but basically we're just going to mix some paint, throw some reducer in it. We're spraying it about 18 to 20 psi, and we'll put a couple light coats on, probably force it a little bit with just some air to help this dry out a little faster so we can do more coats quicker. And I guess we'll just get into it. Alright guys, it's all dried up and ready to go. It's ready for a clear coat, and I'm not doing anything special, just Fractal can clear on it. Something to give it a protective finish and maybe give it a little more gloss. Before I do that, I do want to see what it looks like on the case. It looks pretty good right now, but you know, things change once you get foam behind it and black pieces of plastic everywhere and inside the bezel. So we just want to hold it up, make sure it's going to have a pretty decent look, and do what we want to do. And I think the light plays off those angles really nice, and that's what I was hoping for. Doing this in a 3-color paint job was going to be a pain, so I'm glad this works out. I think it looks pretty sharp. So I say we'll get it clear coated and cured up. That's going to take a little while, and I won't force you all to watch paint dry. So I'll have this ready for the next video, ready and mounted up. Now, the bad thing about this build isn't anything to do with the case, it's to do with the color. Unfortunately, they don't have NVIDIA green down at the hardware store, so coming up with something like this is going to be a little more difficult. If you've got access to an airbrush and can mix up the paints, it can be super simple, but if you're going to try to rattle can this, it becomes a little more difficult finding that color or having somebody mix it up for you and put it in a spray can, which can be expensive. So that's one of those things kind of to look at and figure out on your own. I wish I could help you out with that. I wish there was a brand out there that just made this color that I knew about. If somebody knows about it, leave it down in the comments so we all have access to it. And on that note, I guess if you have any questions or comments, leave those down in the comments as well. If you like the video, hit the like. If you want to see what this looks like when it's all cleared and put on the case, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. And I should be back with some more in a week or two, I think. So that's all I've got. I will talk to you all later and go out and mod something.